Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to this installment of North Korean Movie Reviews, where today we are looking at what many regard as the most feminist film made in the Hermit Kingdom, Flower in the Snow. Directed by Kim Chan-hyol and released in 2011, Flower in the Snow depicts a near-sexually homogeneous village where the vast majority of its population are women. The theme intending to show that under the socialist model, women are just as capable of safeguarding a revolution by creating the ideal workers' paradise without male intervention. The film begins with a panoramic view of a remote village deep in the snowy mountains of North Korea. As the townspeople prepare for the new year, our protagonist, In-sun, played by Shin Young-in, learns that she has just been promoted to manager of a factory that has ceased to function under the previous manager's watch. In-sun is wholeheartedly opposed to the promotion, as she believes that she does not have the skill set to revive the factory. She begs the previous manager's wife for his return and laments to the chief engineer that she is not qualified for the position. However, the engineer attempts to alleviate her concerns by telling her that she will do just fine. This doesn't work, however, and In-sun bolts out of her office. While In-sun retreats to the mountainside out of frustration, In-sun's mother, played by Kim Young-suk, converses with a few girls from around the village while on her way to bring her daughter breakfast. Her mother says to the girls that she can tell that they are apprehensive about having a female manager for the first time, but advises them not to despair. In-sun's mother is then greeted by one of the workers who tells her that her daughter is not home and suggests that she may have gone to see Myung-sik, who is In-sun's fiancé. Upon returning home, we get to see Myung-sik greet her mother on her daughter's promotion, but tells her that he too has not seen In-sun and was expecting to see her at her house. Myung-sik follows his soon-to-be mother-in-law inside, where we see that he is a kind-hearted, almost progressive man who is ecstatic about his future wife becoming the new manager, exclaiming that he has the entire townspeople excited. We are then treated to a flashback of how Myung-sik and In-sun met. It was a normal day for Myung-sik on his way home from work when he suddenly sees one of the local children drowning in a river, with In-sun, who also cannot swim, attempting to save him. Myung-sik quickly dives in to save the two and berates In-sun for almost drowning herself for trying to save him. In-sun explains that she had to save the child and then dives back into the water to retrieve the wool she had left behind. Myung-sik goes in after her to try to save her again, but In-sun laments that the wool is more important than her life. Fast forward to the present day, and we see that In-sun is late for her first conference to decide the next 10-year plan for the wool factory. The chief engineer begrudgingly starts the conference without her, and lays out a plan to restore their machinery over the next 10 years. All of the workers applaud the chief engineer's plan until In-sun apologetically enters the room. She objects to the chief's plan and alternatively wishes to demolish the entire factory and build a new modern one from scratch. The workers are indecisive about this proposition. The chief engineer asks if she even has a project to carry out her proposal. In-sun replies that she does not, but instead of letting said criticism defeat her, she reaches into her coat and reveals a red book containing President Kim Il-sung's last instructions before his demise. In the book, Kim Il-sung states that out of worry for the people of their province, he ordered a brand new factory be built so that they could have brand new quilts to keep them warm during the harsh winter months. The book is quietly passed around each worker, instilling a permeating silence as each worker's hand skims over the sacred text drafted by their eternal president.
수령님의 유언도 한날 한시에 받아안고 맹세도 함께 다졌는데 오늘날 경의하는 장군님께 기쁨을 드린 공장들과 우리 공장은 왜 하늘 땅 차이입니까? 그런데 이제 와서 우리가 이 낡은 공장을 벗으나 해서 우리 인민들에게 양토리불이 골고루 다 차려지게 하시려는 오보의 수령님의 서원을 과연 풀어드릴 수 있겠습니까?
Insun concludes by asserting that they have neglected to live up to their president's final instructions by simply scraping by, as opposed to envisioning a new factory as he desired. We see Insun's idea come to fruition in the next scene as the workers cooperate in tearing down the factory to the foundation. A cheerful Insun is introduced to the new party secretary, Sin Chang-hyun, who is equally enthralled by the decisiveness that Insun brings to the village. Less enthusiastic, however, is the chief engineer, who dismisses Insun's decision to destroy the factory as irresponsible, citing to Chang-hyun in a private conversation that she, quote, acts without thinking.
구전의 수준으로 끌어올리는 것이 최선의 방도였는데 이제는 지배인이 됐으니 모든 일에서 매사에 신중해야겠는데
그건 무슨 소리입니까?
아직도 반장 때처럼 물덤벙슬덤벙.
Insun continues to work tirelessly with the remainder of the girls mining a lime kiln to manufacture cement, stopping only to hurriedly eat and discuss her upcoming wedding with her mother before departing for Kaechon to acquire coal.
이 딸의 마음 꼭꼭 알아맞힌다니까.
On the train back from Kaechon, we see Insun's maternalistic side as she shares a meal with a family of orphan children that Insun has elected to bring back with her. The two oldest girls, Myung-hwa and Myung-ok, ask if they will be able to remain together as a family. Insun reassures the children that she knew their mother well and guarantees that they will stay together by inviting them to stay at her home, as well as having Myung-hwa and Myung-ok work in the new factory. This draws the ire of Insun's mother, however, who was worried that bringing in so many children will upset her fiancé, but Insun is unconcerned.
저희들을 데려왔니? 어? 애들이 좋겠어요. 야, 내가 지배인이 되는 바람에 더해서 사는 명씨가 어떻게 나올지 모르는 판에 저 수탁한 애들 데려면 어쩌자는 거야? 어? 엄마, 어머니랑 함께 일하던 사람들의 자식들이 아니나요?
The next day, however, Insun arrives at the worksite only to see the chief engineer injured from an accident related to the lime kiln. He scolds Insun for her carelessness and tells her that building a new factory is impossible.
장차 현대적인 공장은 어떻게 건설하겠다는 거요?
Insun replies that it is too late to change course and orders the remainder of the workers to go home for the day, while she lingers to construct the lime kiln by herself well into the evening. Her long stretch of working alone is cut short when Chang-hyun joins her. During their small talk, Chang-hyun mentions that the chief engineer visited a specialist in a nearby town to recruit his services, but that he could not join them because he must attend to his wife and newborn child.
허탕치고 왔습니다.
왜요?
집에 가보니 대식설인데다가 저는 방금 해산을 하고 앓기까지 하더라는 말.
Insun, quick to think on her feet, resolves with Chang-hyun to construct a modest house for the family so the specialist can work without leaving his wife and child behind every day. The next morning, the girls return to the lime kiln to see it already completed. They rush to Chang-hyun to congratulate him and elucidate that construction should be a man's job. Chang-hyun corrects them by saying that it was actually Insun who had built it overnight and that he had only aided her. Meanwhile, Insun travels through the icy tundra to meet the cement specialist to tell him of the house they'd built for him. On her way back, she nearly falls through a frozen pond as it cracks beneath her feet, only to be saved just in time by Chang-hyun.
몸을 좀 덮이시오.
The two make camp for the night. Chang-hyun asks why In-sun left for 2 days after being appointed the manager of her new factory. She goes on a lengthy anecdote about how she visited a silk factory in a nearby village, and how when Kim Jong-il visited the factory, he found the rancid smell satisfactory because he had not eaten a proper meal since he began his tour of the country, but chose to tour the country anyways because he thought of the lengths women should go to provide for their families. This apparently inspired In-sun because of reasons in Juche, so she returns to her village determined to become the, quote, mother of her factory.
그날 난 고치가 마음에서 하루 종일 울었어요. 장군님께서는 현지 지도의 길에서 힘들고 지쳤다가도 일꾼들은 어머니의 심정으로 일해야 한다. 자식들의 행복을 위해선 천만 고생도 달게 여기는 그런 어머니가 돼야 한다고 하시던 수령님의 당부가 되새겨져. 아니 저건 또 뭐야?
The following day, Insun's mother ventures home to see the townspeople moving all the shit out of her house. They explain that Insun decided to move them all into the factory dormitory for the winter so that the specialists could live in their old home. Oh my god. Their mother is initially reasonably upset at her daughter's brazen decision to move her and the kids she just adopted into a cramped, smoked-out, mesothelioma-ridden dorm. Once again, because this is Juche Best Korea, however, the mother is eventually won over by Insun's devotion to the Juche idea and even offers to help work despite clearly being of advanced age.
내 앞에 설 준비까지 다 돼 있다. 어머니, 정말이에요? 엄마, 고마워요. 우리 엄마 제일이야. 야, 정말 우리가 이렇게 멋진 공장에서 일하게 된단 말이지. 새로운 기술자, 시멘트만
After the cement worker unveils his plans for the new factory, Insun is greeted by her former lover Myung-sik, who queries whether or not Insun had forgotten about him. Insun apologizes for neglecting Myung-sik and goes with him to the train station to see him off for his next assignment. Before the train leaves, she gives Myung-sik treats and a letter with instructions to read it after he'd departed. Myung-sik thanks Insun and promises to wait for her, however long it would take. As Myung-sik departs, however, he reads the letter she'd given him, which tells him to forget about her, as she has already adopted 5 children and has devoted her life to them as well as the factory. She watches in tears as the train departs over the horizon and returns home to her newfound purpose.
애들을 공장에 데리고 오면서 그 애들과 약속했어요.
When Insun breaks the news of her broken engagement to her mother laments that she doesn't want her daughter to end up alone. Insun consoles her mother, saying that it was her mother's decision not to remarry after her husband passed and to look after Insun that inspired her to do the same with the 5 kids she had adopted. The kids believe that the real reason Insun adopted them, however, was to use them as labor for her factory.
너희들 그러다가 할머니가 들으면 어쩌려고 그래? 야, 그만 힘을 내라. 자, 힘내자. 좋아. 그래. 뼈가. 야, 효순아. 너 어디 가니? 언니야, 난 나무 끄는 것만은 정말 못하겠어. 우리 좀 참자. 조심히.
Tensions in the village, and especially among the family, come to a boiling point when Insun goes full Karen mode and starts berating the 3 oldest girls, who are still minors by you, not to mention orphans, for not cutting down big enough trees for her factory during a blizzard. Never mind the fact that child labor is illegal in virtually every industrialized nation on Earth, apparently not in North Korea. Her emotional abuse gets so bad that one of the children, Myung-ok, can't even bring herself to eat and just cries, while another child, Hyoshin, runs away into the freezing night just to escape the abuse. Insun goes out to search for Hyoshin, but nearly dies in the blizzard before being saved by a tractor driver who happened by.
세워주세요. 같이.
She eventually tracks down Hyoshin and does the logical thing that anybody would do when rescuing a runaway orphan. Subjecting her to more emotional abuse, of course. Instead of admitting that she was too hard on the girl, she instead tells the sobbing Hyoshin never to think of seeing her mother ever again, and that she should be ashamed for running away and breaking the oath she made to serve the president no matter what. Beautiful. That approach is assuredly not going to lead to even more resentment and trauma in a young orphan that's already been taken away from her hometown to chop wood for a matriarchal despot. Eventually, the girls finally collect enough lumber for their factory. In the midst of their celebrations, however, an element of the KPA arrives and tells them that they are appropriating all of the wood they just collected to build a power plant. In-sun is distressed but does not protest and explains to her workers not to lament over the fact that their weeks of back-breaking child labor exploiting work was for nothing, but to rejoice because every woman has a son in the army, according to In-sun, which isn't true, but hey, whatever.
정말 고맙습니다.
However, in a scene that can only be described as the director's demonstrable ignorance of conflict and resolution, literally right after In-sun says this, an army officer visits In-sun and tells her that because of her generosity in giving the soldiers all of their wood, he will repay her by giving her that wood back with cement and rubber, basically making the entire scene pointless as virtually no time elapsed from the conflict to the resolution. But okay, hey, we're just going with it. Meanwhile, In-sun finds out that Myung-sik was in town and that he had asked for a marriage registration form. Believing that he had moved on and found another woman, she sorrowfully wishes him well while monologuing by the lake where she had first met him. Later that day, however, she receives a call from the hospital, learning that Myung-sik had been in a terrible accident while trying to deliver a truck full of new machinery for her factory. She and fellow party officials make it to the hospital only to find out that he had died. The doctor hands In-sun an enclosure from Myung-sik containing the marriage registration application and a letter where he confessed his love for In-sun and his desire to marry her all along, despite everything that had happened.
순직자 자녀들이 스스럼없이 부르는 진정한 아버지, 어머니가 되어 자식들 모두가 친부모들의 참된 넋을 반드시 잇도록 하겠습니다.
Saddened but emboldened by Myung-sik's sacrifice, In-sun works herself into exhaustion with the rest of the girls, and at long last, after a full year of bitter work, her workers and family rejoice as the brand new factory is completed. The film begins to come to a close with the women happily working in their brand new modern factory. They rally around In-sun for her tireless dedication to the general's last wish for their village. Hyoshin, the orphan girl who ran away before, comes to reconcile with In-sun by thanking her for not, quote, giving up on her. The two embrace and take a picture together in front of Hyoshin's mother's spinning machine, which is now operated by Hyoshin. In-sun catches up with the chief engineer later that night, who is conversing with her adopted daughters Hyoshin and Myung-uk. Together they realize that it's New Year's Eve and discuss all that has changed in the years since In-sun became the new manager. Together, they stare upon the village mural to Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. In-sun wishes that she had flowers to place but cannot due to the cold winter. Hyoshin then suggests that they place cotton in place of flowers, calling them a flower that blooms in the snow.
눈 속에 빈꽃. 저쪽으로 데려다 주세요. 야, 오늘 주인이 어서 들어가라고요.
예, 명화야. 이 기쁜 날 한마디.
The film's final scene takes place 10 years in the future, when the eldest of In-sun's adopted daughters, Myung-hwa, while at her wedding ceremony, thanks In-sun for becoming a second mother to her. In-sun tearfully embraces Myung-hwa, and as a last act of selflessness, thanks her by giving her the house that had originally been built for her. The guests praise In-sun as the village matriarch, and the film ends with In-sun and her workers doing what they do best, working tirelessly to make wool quilts in the spirit of the great general. Flower in the Snow is a difficult film to review, not because it's good or anything, but because it's your average stale, run-of-the-mill North Korean film that above all pushes the same values and narrative that we've seen 19 times before with this series. The characters are all the same, and any conflicts are resolved by the same adherence to the Juche idea. Let's start with our protagonist. In-sun is your typical socialist realist propagandist who at first is overwhelmed with the sudden news that she was appointed manager. Feeling that she is woefully unprepared to take on this huge responsibility, she runs away and is reluctant to return until Myung-sik and her mother convince her to try. Eventually, we do see her nervously accept her position and overcome all of the naysayers and rally her fellow villagers to the cause of building a new factory. This is not without a few road bumps along the way, however. First of all, we see Insun's dedication taken to the point where she places it above her own well being. That's fine, but we also see her dedication take precedence over the well being of everybody else. Adopting 5 children is great when you want to provide a positive, loving environment for them. Adopting them and then promptly leaving them in the care of her aging mother without asking her, then moving them all into a cramped, decrepit dorm, and then exploiting the 3 oldest girls for child labor is the antithesis of a positive, loving environment. When watching this movie, I know I'm supposed to see In-sun as a martyr of the Korean Revolution who's working tirelessly for the people, but I don't see that. Instead, I see a self-indulgent narcissist who takes advantage of those who are the most vulnerable by working them to the brink of death and inflicting severe mental abuse on 3 girls who have just lost their mother, all for the sake of constructing a new factory that only serves to make herself look good in the eyes of the party at the end. This brings me to a burning question I've had since I started watching this movie. Why exactly do they need to construct a new factory to begin with? I mean, I know Kim Il-sung apparently told them to as his last instruction, but it's never explained at all precisely what's wrong with the existing factory that they have. We know that the village they live in is small, with an equally small population of workers. So why is an entirely new building needed? Isn't the cornerstone of any socialist ideology not to produce things needlessly? In the beginning, when there is a meeting to discuss what to do to resume production, the party secretary recommends simply acquiring new machinery, which would be overwhelmingly more cost efficient than scrapping everything and just starting over. The only real justification given by Insun is that they would need a bigger facility to produce more wool, but surely you could simply procure newer, more modern machines that produce wool more quickly and efficiently to make up for the smaller facility, could you not? Besides, a bigger facility means nothing if you have the same small amount of workers to begin with, so the whole situation to me makes no sense, and again, it comes off as just one giant vanity project to make the protagonist look good at the cost of the health and well-being of everyone else. I'm particularly infuriated by the scene in which Insun berates her 3 adopted daughters because, being kids, were unable to chop down and carry the logs of large enough trees. Besides the fact that minors should not be working, period, regardless of what country they live in, she then yells at them for not working hard enough, particularly Hyoshin, driving her to the point where she decides that it's better to die in a snowstorm than spend another minute in Insun's presence. Does Insun ever suffer for her behavior, however? Of course not. Just like in the movie Two Families in Handong, abuse of any kind is perfectly fine so long as you are doing it for the good of the country. The film's resolution shows Hyoshin thanking Insun for being a heartless wench because she gets to use her mother's spinning machine now. Hooray! Insun is a terrible protagonist and a garbage person. Period. Another point I feel I should address is the idea that this is supposed to be a feminist film. How? Though we see Insun and her female workers working hard, this is hardly evidence that this is a feminist film. Women work hard in every North Korean film. Yes, Insun is appointed as the manager of her factory, but everything Insun wants to do is still at the mercy of the local party leadership, all of whom are men. Who helps her produce the lime kiln furnace? A man. Who was the cement worker needed to construct the building? A man. Who was the person who literally gave up his life to stop the runaway truck so that she could receive her machines? A man. I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong with feminism or making a feminist film. I'm saying that I fail to see how this movie is one. Insun has no real autonomy and is still under the watchful eye of the Workers' Party of Korea. And while it is nice to see women as the focal point of a film that champions empowerment, it should simply be noted that this film doesn't break any barriers as far as female empowerment in North Korea is concerned. From an outside perspective, you could argue, I suppose, that the film is trying to say that women can become martyrs of the revolution. However, North Korea has always stated that women can be martyrs of the revolution, so nothing new is being said here. Scratching away at the surface, and you'll realize that the theme in this film is identical to literally every film I've reviewed before it. No matter how toxic or abusive you are, if you are a loyal servant to the regime, you can act however you want and you will suffer no consequences. This film is nothing more than state propaganda masquerading as female empowerment. No, you should not watch it. This has been Jesse from Chosan Ibn Sok, everybody, and until next time, I hope you all have a great day.